Alright, YouTube, getting back onto this project here. We've got the frame here partially straightened out. I'm not 100% happy with where it's at here, so I'm going to keep working on this a little bit and try to get this frame as close as possible before we kind of commit ourselves. I'm going to do a little bit more here to try and straighten these frame horns. I don't know if you can see this in the video. This one's tilted just a little bit in at the top. I'd like to get that straightened out a little bit. I also want to take some measurements and things and try and make sure that we're as square as possible coming forward from that engine cross member. You know, behind that, there's not a whole lot we can do to affect it. That cross member is pretty stout, so there's really not much moving things around at that cross member. I don't think things have been moved much behind that, but I would like to take some measurements, kind of compare things a little bit, and try to make sure that we've got things square so that we don't have any problems with the alignment of the front end. Then I need to get in here with a grinder, take out the rest of the welds here, and get what's left of some of these old brackets out of the way. I think this is probably where the brackets were welded in for the bumper mount. So we'll need to get those cleaned up, and then we'll be ready for these guys to go in. These were removed from another 4x4 frame, and they will be going in place something like that. Obviously they need to slip inside that frame a little bit more, but they will be bolted into place with grade 8 hardware back here instead of these rivets. Those go through the frame and into the mount for the core support on both sides. So that gives me a good tool for locating that bracket in here into the frame, and then we'll weld them in along the top and the bottom here. So that's kind of where we're at here. That's kind of the next step in the progression, is to get that done. There's also another piece here that a friend of mine kind of pointed out to me. Shout out to Bill on this one. This was something that he noticed. This one's kind of bent up a little bit from when I removed it, but I can flatten that out and straighten it out. This piece actually goes inside the frame horn down in here and connects into the engine cradle. That's a big difference between a two-wheel drive frame and a 4x4 frame on these trucks, is that this member is not in the two-wheel drive frame. So if you think about how the load is applied to a two-wheel drive truck, come around here to the wheel well. A two-wheel drive truck's got a great big spring tower in here that the coil spring sits inside of. So the entire truck hangs right here on the front end. When you go to convert this to a 4x4, you're spreading that load out across basically the front half of the frame. You know, you've got your mount back here that sits back underneath the cab, so you've got half of the front end weight applied there, and the other half of it is clear out here on the end of the frame horn. Well, this frame horn out here is not super stout, so that piece goes on the inside right in here on the passenger side of the frame and reinforces this area of the frame so that it can take that load. And oddly enough, anybody that's doing a four-wheel drive conversion using an RSK or something similar, you're not addressing that issue. You know, you're tying the frame together in the front with the lower member of the RSK, the reverse shackle kit, but you're not reinforcing the frame here on the passenger side. The driver's side already has a gusset very similar in place, because that's where the steering box bolts on. But on a 4x4 truck, I think you need to have that reinforcement on both sides. So again, shout out to Bill for pointing that out. I went ahead and removed this one from the donor truck frame. It's kind of rusty and crusty, but it's definitely solid. There's still a lot of good meat there. So I'm going to go ahead and make provisions to put this thing in place on this frame. I'm going to go ahead and try to do it right. We're going to try and put that guy in place. We'll have to drill some holes into the core support and bolt it in place, or I don't know, I may just weld it in. But we're going to try and add that piece as well. So 3 little pieces to be added to the frame. I got some help here today. 3 little pieces to be added to the frame to try and support this thing and to make it what it needs to be to become a good heavy-duty 4x4 work truck. So with that in mind, I'm going to get some tools out here and get to work. Let's get started. Well, got some progress here. 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Got this all cleaned up. We got clearance made for our new frame sections. It's just kind of sitting in there. I haven't tacked it in place or anything yet, but you can see there how that should be. This one lines up okay. I still want to tweak this frame horn a little bit, kind of try and twist it this way just a little bit. It's just a little bit crooked there yet. Might actually be easier to do that once I've got this welded in. It just kind of keeps everything a little bit more stable. I also want to take this little high spot out of it and take that part this way. But I think that's going to be easier to do once we've got this reinforcing and tying all that together. This side looks pretty decent. Our holes line up nice. I'll stick a bolt through there so we can see. That's it's not the right bolt, but it's enough for illustrative purposes. So that is pretty well square to the truck. It's not square to the frame right now because, again, I need to twist that tube just a little bit, but that's about square to where the cab and the frame and everything should be. However, on this other side, we've got a problem. This hole that they drilled for the spring shackle to mount to is way too high. You can kind of look at it in relation to this oval hole here, and then look at the other side. See here where we're almost even with the bottom of that hole? This one's way up and that other one's down in here someplace. So we're gonna have to fix that as well. This is about a ½ inch higher than the other side. So more work to be done here. I've got to reinforce this side as well. There's supposed to be, on a 4x4 frame, this is kind of dented in. There's an indentation here so that the space in here is narrower. You can kind of see as it is now that there's way too much space in there, and that's taken up by an indentation in a 4x4 frame that offsets and makes the spacing right. So we've got some work to do there. I don't know if I'm going to cut that dented in portion out of one of the 4x4 frames, and I'll lay it up on the inside here. I'll probably still have to add some metal behind it to reinforce that and make it solid like it should be. I don't want to just leave a hollow piece in there to guide that. I don't know if I'll do that or if I will just make a spacer of the right width and thickness to go on the inside of there and then weld it onto the inside of the frame. But one way or another, that hole's going to have to be dealt with. Whatever I put in here will probably cover part of that, and then we'll weld that shut. Looks like there was a pilot hole there that they drilled that was wrong, so they moved down, but not nearly enough. And of course, these holes don't need to be there at all, so I may just weld those shut as well. So there'll be some work to be done here, but we're making good headway. Like I said, one step back is okay as long as we're making 2 steps forward. It's kind of how we do the dance. All right, guys. Well, I've debated and second-guessed myself on this for about long enough. Taken a bunch of measurements here on what it's going to take to bring the side wall of this frame into where it needs to be to hold the spring shackle. Basically, the way that these go together, I'll try to illustrate this as best I can. I'll work on this side because it's together. Alright, so you've got the outside of the frame, you've got the inside, this pocket that I'm adding, and this is not quite square because I've just got it loosely held in there. But the spring shackle comes up in and lines up with the hole. And if you can see, we've got a space there on the side between the inside of the outside frame rail and the bushing on the spring shackle. And again, you know, this is all kind of loose because I'm just holding this stuff together here as I'm talking about it. But I've taken a bunch of measurements off of a couple other 4x4 trucks here. And what I've come up with is that I need to make up about 5/8 of an inch. So I need to add about 5/8 of an inch in here to bring that shackle over to where it needs to be to hold it in position to line the axle up. So I've got to add 5/8 of an inch. I've got to put a spacer in there. So on the 4x4 frame, this is indented. It's actually bent in here. There's a kind of a cup shape in the frame here that comes over to align that. You know, obviously I guess I could cut up a 4x4 frame and weld that in here if I wanted to, but I don't want to do more welding on this than I have to. I don't want to do anything to weaken this frame if I can avoid it. So what I think I'm going to do is we'll put a spacer in here to space this out. Yeah, I could do exactly what the previous owner of this had done, and I could stack a bunch of washers in there, and that would probably be fine, but that's just not how I want to do this. I don't feel comfortable doing things like that. I want it to be right. I don't want it to be multiple thicknesses because I know how things are here in Ohio. Moisture and salt and dirt gets in there in between those layers and starts to work, and pretty soon that thing is swelled up like nobody's business because it's rusting. So what I think I'm going to do is delay a couple of days here and place an order for some 5/8 stock. Sorry, my assistant is being a little whiny here. Whiny kitty. I'm going to order some 5/8 stock that I'll just fasten in here. We'll weld it into place in a couple of places so that it's fast. That's also going to give me the ability to correct the location of these holes. Actually, neither one of these sides does that hole line up with the inside frame horn like it should. They're both going to be crooked if I leave those holes where they are. So if I put a piece of 5/8 plate over that, what that'll allow me to do is to re-drill those holes from the inside, correct the location, and then I can weld these old holes shut. I think that's how I want to do this. I'm going to feel better about sending this down the road with somebody else if I take the time to do it right. So it's going to slow me down here a little bit. I do have other things that I can work on. I was just kind of looking forward to getting this frame buttoned up, but I think that's going to be the right way to do it. So I'm going to place an order. We'll order $10 worth of steel from McMaster Car. They'll probably have it here in a day or two, and we'll cut that up, get it cleaned up, get it welded in here, drill some holes. We'll weld these other holes shut where we don't need them, and should be in pretty good shape. So that's the plan. I'm going to go inside and place an order, and we'll keep chipping away at this thing as we can. All right, guys. Well, it's another day here. I'm still waiting on steel for the spring mounts to reinforce where that shackle is going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and work on frame gusset that goes in here ahead of the engine cross member. Go right in here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on this, make some progress while I've got a little bit of time to work on this and while I'm waiting on my steel. So let's get to work. Alright, well, I'm getting close here. A couple of things I need to do. I think I'm going to bring the torch out here. Number one, I don't know if I pointed this out before or not, but a pretty bad kink in the frame here. I don't think I did that when I was straightening it out. So I don't know if they did that when they were horsing around with it before or what the issue was. I guess it's possible that I did that when I was straightening it out. But this worst part of it right here needs to go up quite a bit to allow that gusset to go into place. And then kind of the same thing down here. It's bent down there pretty good. So I think I'm going to put some heat into that with the torch and see if I can flatten that out, straighten that out. Putting a little heat on this frame probably isn't the worst thing to try and get it tweaked and straightened around the way that I need to anyway. The other thing, bring it back here, these are the pivot brackets for the TTB, and they welded them in. I don't know if you can see that real well. You can probably see that one. This one would probably be okay. This one is not, and that's because this is right where the track bar mount needs to bolt onto the inside of this cross member. So I got to get this guy out of here. I could probably reach in here and do some of that work with a grinder, but if I'm going to have the torch out here, I'll just blow it out of the way, and then we'll clean this face up here with the grinder once the bracket is gone. So I'm going to get the torches out here, and we'll see what we can do with some fire. guys. Well, hopefully you can hear me here. It's getting crazy windy out here. I guess fall has arrived. I don't know if you saw it. It blew the camera over on the tripod here. We're all right, but I've got this kind of straightened out. I think that's about where it needs to be. As you can see, I've got that reinforcement gusset sitting in place there. I think it is pretty much where it needs to be there. Don't know the positioning of that is super critical. There's really nothing that bolts through that and to the frame, so it's basically just making it fit up where it's going to fit the best and provide the strength that it needs to. So I've kind of compared it to one of the other trucks here. Looks to be in pretty good shape, so I think that is ready to be welded into place. I did get some of those pivot brackets cut out of the way. Got the welds on that back there, so I've just got a little bit of cleanup to do there with the grinder, and we should be in good shape to keep this project moving forward. So I'm sure this wind noise is driving you nuts. I'll go ahead and get back to work here. Thanks for watching.